key burned cold against my palm, its jagged teeth a silent accusation as I stood before the sagging porch of my childhood home in Sanolo Mari, a small Romanian village nestled in the shadow of the Carpathians. 2 weeks had passed since we buried my father, Edward Mitchell, in the village cemetery, his plain pine coffin lowered into the earth under a sky heavy with July heat. I'd postponed this moment, dreading the return to a place that held more ghosts than memories, but the weight of obligation, sorting his belongings, selling the house, pressed too heavily to ignore. Sanolo Mari lay frozen in time, its narrow cobblestone streets and weathered facades untouched by the 25 years since I'd fled at 18 for university in Bucharest. The corner grocery, its sign faded to a ghostly outline, clung stubbornly to its post where the road curved. The community center's socialist mural, a relic of Ceausescu's era, peeled in the same patterns I'd traced as a boy, its colors bleeding into the cracked plaster. Even the sidewalk fractures seemed preserved, mocking me with their familiarity, as if the village refused to release the child I'd been. I exhaled, my breath catching the dust-laden air, thick with the cloying sweetness of linden blossoms and the faint tang of hay from nearby fields. The key turned with a reluctant scrape, the lock's mechanism untouched since the funeral, its resistance mirroring my own. The door creaked open on rusted hinges, exhaling a musty breath laced with the stale ghosts of my father's aftershave, cigarette smoke, and something older, unnameable. A scent of decay that seemed to seep from the walls themselves. I lingered in the doorway, my chest constricting as memories swarmed, sharp and unwelcome, like moths drawn to a flame. This house, with its sagging beams and shadowed corners, held too many shadows, few of them kind. Stepping across the threshold, I closed the door behind me, the thud reverberating through the dim hallway, a finality that set my pulse racing. Dust motes danced in the thin beams of afternoon light piercing the half-drawn curtains, their sluggish waltz casting fleeting patterns on the worn floorboards. Family photos lined the walls, a gallery of my youth arranged in merciless chronology. Gap-toothed kindergarten smiles, awkward middle school poses, my face growing leaner, more guarded, until the record stopped abruptly at 18, when I'd left this place behind. The wooden dining table, scarred with grooves from countless meals, stood unchanged in the adjacent room, its surface a map of nicks and burns. I ran my fingers across it, the tactile memory sparking a vivid recollection. Here, at 5 or 6, my father had first spoken of the man who hides, his voice dropping to a whisper that seemed to summon the dusk itself. "You must be home before sunset, Thomas," he'd said, his eyes flicking to the windows, their glass reflecting the fading light like unblinking eyes. "That's when he hunts." As a child, I dismissed it as a parental scare tactic, a village boogeyman conjured to enforce curfew. Only later, when nightmares began to claw at my sleep, did I sense the fear in his voice, a tremor that suggested he believed in the monster he described. The house was silent now, save for the occasional groan of settling wood, but the weight of his warnings pressed against my ribs, an invisible hand tightening with each step. Sorting through his belongings felt like dismantling a life I barely understood, a task too raw, too intimate for today. The attic, with its forgotten relics shrouded in dust, seemed a safer starting point, neutral ground where memories might be dulled by time and neglect. The stairs creaked under my weight, each step a protest from the unmaintained farmhouse, their complaints echoing in the narrow upstairs hallway. I tugged the attic ladder down from the ceiling, its hinges screeching like a warning, and climbed into the musty darkness, my head ducked to avoid the low entrance. A small round window, its glass clouded with grime, let in a sliver of light, barely illuminating stacks of cardboard boxes, discarded furniture, and the faint glint of cobwebs strung like spectral nets. I pulled the chain on a bare bulb, its harsh glow flooding the space, revealing my father's archived life. Stacks of yellowed books, holiday decorations abandoned after my mother's death when I was 4, a cracked mirror propped against a chair, its surface reflecting fragments of the attic's chaos. A box labeled Thomas School, in his meticulous script, caught my eye, its edges softened by years of damp air. I knelt, prying it open to find a trove of childhood relics, Finger-painted artwork, report cards noting my quiet, thoughtful nature, and tendency to daydream. Certificates for spelling bees I'd forgotten. Beneath them lay a photo album, its leather cover unfamiliar, its weight heavy with promise. Sitting cross-legged on the dusty floor, I opened the album, the pages crackling like dry leaves. The first image stopped my breath. 4 boys, me, Andre Vasquez, Jacob Klein, and Noah Ionescu, squinting in the summer sun of 1998, arms slung around each other, grinning with the reckless, unburdened joy of 7-year-olds on vacation. The date on the back, July 12, 1998, was scrawled in my father's hand, a mere 3 days before our world shattered. The memory surged, vivid as a wound. The heat of cobblestones under our sneakers, the village square's ancient oak tree our finish line, our laughter echoing as we plotted adventures in the endless summer. That year, school had ended, and we were inseparable, a quartet bound by the fierce loyalty of childhood, until we weren't. I stared at Andre's face, his peace signs raised, right foot kicked out in a goofy pose, his grin wide and unguarded. This was Andre before the tunnels, before the darkness, before the whistling that became the soundtrack of my nightmares. Closing my eyes, I was there again. The damp chill of the tunnels, Andre's scream piercing the silence, the fleeting brush of his fingers as he was yanked into the void, the frantic search that followed, the blood-soaked clearing where they found him, broken and changed forever. My hands trembled, the album slipping to the floor, its thud muffled by the attic's dust. 25 years had passed, but in this attic, surrounded by my father's relics, it was yesterday. The pain is raw as if I were still that terrified boy. Sanolo Mari brimmed with legends, as every Romanian village did. Tales of strigoi lurking in graveyards, forest spirits who lured travelers astray. But the man who hides was different. My father spoke of him with a conviction that transcended parental caution. His warnings laced with a fear I couldn't parse as a child. "He comes for children who stay out too late," he'd say, his eyes scanning the dusk beyond the windows, as if expecting a shadow to materialize. "He hides in the shadows, whistling before he hunts." After Andre's attack, that whistle became a specter in my dreams, a sound I couldn't shake, its low, mournful cadence echoing in the quiet moments of my adult life. I picked up another photo, this one of us at the village swimming hole, our skin tanned from days spent outdoors. Noah, nervous even then, his eyes darting to the horizon. Jacob, brash and confident, his smile a challenge. Andre, making bunny ears behind my head. Me, staring at the camera with an expression I couldn't decipher. Happy, perhaps, or already touched by the dread that would soon consume us. 3 days after that photo, Andre was taken. His absence a wound the village never healed. His funeral was small, my father's isolation evident in the sparse attendance. A few neighbors, distant relatives, drinking buddies from the village pub. I realized then how little I knew him, how he'd kept even me at arm's length, our conversations limited to surface matters. Weather, local news, never the shadows that haunted his eyes. The attic's light shifted, the afternoon waning, casting long shadows that seemed to writhe in the corners. I needed a hotel. Staying here, surrounded by these ghosts, was unthinkable. As I stood, my hand brushed something behind a stack of Christmas decorations. A wooden box, intricately carved with twisted, eye-like patterns, about the size of a shoebox, secured with a small brass padlock. It felt out of place among the mundane cardboard and plastic bins, its weight suggesting importance, its concealment deliberate. My chest tightened as I lifted it, the carvings seeming to pulse under my fingers, as if alive with secrets. I carried the box downstairs to the kitchen, the table where my father's warnings had been delivered, now a stage for this new mystery. The kitchen seemed smaller, its linoleum floor worn to a dull sheen, the cabinets sagging under years of neglect. I set the box down, its carvings glinting in the fading light, their sinuous lines evoking the ancient symbols etched into village doorframes to ward off evil. This was no ordinary keepsake. My father had hidden it, yet preserved it, as if torn between secrecy and confession. I hesitated, the memory of that summer day in 1998 flooding back, vivid and unrelenting. We'd raced through the village square, my sneakers slapping against sun-warmed cobblestones, Andre, Jacob, and Noah trailing behind, their shouts mingling with the hum of cicadas. Too slow, I taunted, reaching the ancient oak tree first, its gnarled branches a canopy over our victory. School had ended the day before, and summer stretched endlessly before us. No lessons, no homework, just the promise of adventure with my 3 best friends. We collapsed in the shade, our 7-year-old bodies sprawled dramatically on the grass, panting as if we'd run a marathon rather than a sprint across the square. "What should we do today?" Noah asked, plucking at the grass, his voice tinged with the caution that always tempered his enthusiasm. "Let's play hide and seek in the tunnels," I suggested, the forbidden drainage systems on the village's eastern edge a siren call. Built during World War II, their concrete passages were rumored to have sheltered partisans, though to us they were a labyrinth of mystery, strictly off-limits to children. Jacob's eyes lit up, his grin wide with mischief. "Yes, we haven't gone there in weeks." Noah hesitated, glancing at the sky, its blue unbroken but for a few wispy clouds. "It's already afternoon. We should pick somewhere else." Andre, brushing dirt from his t-shirt, echoed his mother's warning. "My mom says that's where the man who hides lives." The name silenced us, the village's boogeyman, a specter woven into our childhood. Every kid in Sanolo Mari knew the man who hides, a tale parents wielded to ensure curfews. Jacob broke the tension with a laugh, poking Andre's ribs. "That's just a stupid story to keep babies in line. You scared?" Andre's eyes darted to the eastern woods, but he shook his head. "No, just saying what my mom told me." I admitted my father's similar warnings, mimicking his grave tone. "Be home before sunset, Thomas. That's when he hunts." Jacob stood, brushing off his shorts. "It's not sunset. Summer, we're free, and the tunnels are the coolest place in the village." "Who's with me?" Noah relented, insisting we stick to the main tunnel, and we set off, cutting through back alleys and neighbors' yards, our shortcuts known only to local kids. The village pulsed with summer life. Gardens blooming, windows open, old women gossiping on benches, farmers rumbling through on tractors. No one noticed 4 boys bound for adventure. The tunnel entrance, hidden by overgrown bushes at the village's edge, where fields gave way to distant forests, exhaled cool air, a relief from the heat. A rusted metal grate, long pried off by teenagers, left just enough space for us to slip through. Noah's digital watch read 2:07 p.m. He set an alarm for 4 o'clock, his voice firm. "We get back by then, just to be safe." "Fine, Mom," Jacob teased, but none of us argued. Even he wasn't reckless enough to linger in the tunnels as dusk approached. "Let's play hide and seek," I said, the thrill of the forbidden place igniting my imagination. We drew straws with dried grass, and I became the seeker. "Stay in the main tunnel," Noah insisted, recalling a time Andre had gotten turned around in a side passage. I covered my eyes, leaning against the concrete wall, counting aloud, 1, 2, 3. My friends' giggles and footsteps faded, their hushed shushing a playful conspiracy. My father's warning flickered in my mind. "Be home before sunset, Thomas," but I dismissed it. Monsters weren't real, just tales like forest witches or river spirits. 28, 29, 30. Ready or not, here I come. I opened my eyes, the tunnel's darkness swallowing the sunlight a few feet in. I stepped forward, my sneakers scuffing the damp floor, waiting for my eyes to adjust. The village's sounds, birds, distant voices, vanished, replaced by the hollow drip of water echoing off concrete. "I'm gonna find you," I called, my voice bouncing back, distorted. The main tunnel was wide enough for us to walk abreast, a shallow channel in its center dry but for scattered puddles reflecting the faint light. I moved deeper past familiar graffiti, names, crude drawings, searching for my friends. A scuffle to my right made me grin. "I hear you," but it was just a rat, skittering into the shadows. Jacob, always restless, was usually easy to spot. Noah favored spots near the entrance. Andre, the best hider, squeezed into impossible nooks. A muffled laugh, Jacob's, came from ahead, and I quickened my pace, passing landmarks we'd explored before. A cracked pipe, a faded 1962, etched in the wall. Guys, remember we said main tunnel only? I called, a slight unease creeping in. They'd gone deeper than usual. Another laugh, Andre's this time, drew me around a curve where the ceiling lowered, the walls closing in, the air growing musty with hints of rot. The floor grew uneven, strewn with broken concrete and stagnant pools. My foot caught, and I stumbled, catching myself against the wall, my hand coming away slick with moss. Gross, I muttered, wiping it on my shorts. Ahead, a faint glow, Jacob's flashlight, revealed a side passage, narrow and uncharted. Guys, check this out, he called, his voice alive with discovery. There's another tunnel here. I hurried over, relieved to find them. Noah, Andre, and Jacob stood at the passage's mouth, their faces pale in the flashlight's beam. We've never been down this way, Andre said, his eyes wide with excitement. It looks like it goes way back. Noah checked his watch. We've got almost 2 hours. Should we check it out? The passage was half the main tunnel's height, forcing us to crouch or crawl. Cool air wafted from it, carrying a stronger, earthier decay. I hesitated, my father's warning resurfacing, but Jacob's taunt, "Don't be a baby," and his mocking imitation of the man who hides broke the spell. We laughed, the fear dissipating, and agreed to a quick look, promising to stay together. Jacob led, dropping to his hands and knees, his flashlight bouncing wildly. I followed, Andre and Noah behind, our voices echoing in the tight space, the smell of wet dirt and something stale, ancient, clogging my nose. "This is awesome," Jacob whispered, his enthusiasm infectious. The passage seemed to breathe, its walls pressing closer, the weight of the earth above us palpable. After what felt like an eternity, Jacob called back, "It's getting wider. I can stand up." We emerged into a concrete room, its walls slick with green moss, wooden beams sagging overhead like the ribs of some ancient beast. Jacob swept his flashlight in a slow arc, dust particles glittering in the beam. "What is this place?" I whispered, my voice hushed by awe. Noah's flashlight revealed rotted wooden shelves in one corner, Andre suggesting, "Maybe a cellar from a house that got torn down." Jacob spun, his light catching more details. Dirt-caked walls, a faint outline of a doorway leading to a smaller room. Then I saw it, in the corner. A moldy blanket, empty food cans, the charred remains of a small fire. "Someone's been down here," I said, my skin prickling. Andre suggested other kids, but his voice lacked conviction. Jacob nudged a can with his shoe, its rust flaking off. "This is old." Noah checked his watch again. "We should head back. It's been almost an hour." Jacob, usually fearless, nodded, the room's eerie weight unsettling even him. "This place gives me the creeps," I protested, curiosity warring with unease, but agreed to leave, suggesting we return tomorrow with better lights. As we turned, a low whistle, deep, unnatural, like air blown across a bottle's mouth, froze us. Came from deeper within, not wind, not human. "What was that?" Andre whispered. Jacob, his voice unsteady, said, "Probably just the wind." I tried to laugh, mimicking the sound, but another whistle, louder, closer, erased my bravado. Noah pointed, his hand trembling, at a shadow on the wall. Tall, thin, moving independently of our lights, its edges jagged, wrong. Andre screamed as something. A hand, a claw, indistinct in the dark, yanked him into the cold room's shadows. I lunged, our fingers brushing for a heartbeat before he vanished. His scream a blade through the silence. "Run!" Jacob yelled, grabbing my shoulder. Another whistle, almost gleeful, spurred us into the passage, crawling frantically, Andre's cries echoing behind us. My knees and palms bled from the rough concrete. my breath ragged. We burst into the main tunnel, running blindly toward daylight, tumbling out to find Mr. and Mrs. Vasquez nearby, their faces tight with worry. "Where's Andre?" Mrs. Vasquez demanded, her voice breaking. We stammered our story. Side passage, underground room, whistling, shadow, hand. Words tumbling in a frantic jumble. Jacob sprinted for help as Mr. Vasquez entered the tunnel alone, his flashlight fading into the dark. The village mobilized, search parties forming, police arriving with dogs that traced a scent to a stream, then lost it. Hours later, a scream pierced the night, and searchers found Andre in a forest clearing, his body mutilated, left hand and right foot gone, face carved with precise, unnatural cuts, the ground beneath him dark with blood. I pushed through the crowd, seeing him before adults pulled me away. His small, broken form burned into my mind. As they carried him out, I glimpsed a figure between two oaks, tall, limping, its silhouette uneven, as if parts of it were missing. Flashlight beams swept near, and it vanished, but I knew. The man who hides was real, and he'd marked my friend forever. Back in the kitchen, the wooden box stared at me, its carvings seeming to writhe in the dim light, their eye-like shapes watching. I retrieved a screwdriver from my father's toolbox in the hall closet, its red metal worn at the edges, and pried the padlock open with a sharp crack, the sound echoing like a gunshot. Inside lay yellowed newspaper clippings, curled photos, and a sealed envelope addressed to me. "For Thomas, after I'm gone." My hands shook as I spread the contents across the table, the same table where my father's warnings had shaped my childhood, now a stage for his confession. The clippings chronicled Andre's attack, detailing the investigation, the tunnel's ceiling, the village's descent into fear. Headlines screamed of a child mutilated in brutal attack, the text noting increased police presence and the council's decision to seal the tunnels for safety. But three older articles, from 1977, chilled me to the core. "Local man missing," "Search continues for missing man," and "Children claim monster in woods." They described Harold Barnes, an Englishman living rough in the woods, and children's sightings of a disfigured figure, dismissed by officials as overactive imaginations. The final article advised parents to supervise outdoor play, a precaution that felt like a premonition. The envelope's weight was a judgment, its paper crisp despite years in the attic. I tore it open, my father's handwriting spilling across pages dated 3 years ago, when his cancer diagnosis loomed, his mind still sharp but his time short. "Dear Thomas," it began, "if you're reading this, I've passed on, and you found the evidence of my greatest shame. I've tried to tell you face to face, but courage failed me. Perhaps that makes me a coward." The words blurred as I read. What happened to Andre wasn't random. The man who hides was real, and I helped create him. My breath caught, the room tilting. I stumbled to the sink, splashing cold water on my face, the shock grounding me. In the cabinet, I found a half-full bottle of Tuica. The plum brandies burn a harsh comfort as I poured a glass and returned to the table. The letter continued, detailing the summer of 1977, when my father, 17, and his friends Mihi, Constantine, and Victor saw themselves as village protectors. Children had gone missing. A boy from a neighboring village, a girl from Sanolo Mari picking berries. The adults suspected a transient kidnapper, but the police found no answers. Rumors swirled of a stranger, Harold Barnes, an Englishman living in the woods, trading carved trinkets at the market, speaking little Romanian. To the boys, fueled by fear and teenage bravado, Barnes became a monster. They tracked him, noting his visits to the tunnels, finding scraps of children's clothing near his camp, items they later realized might have been scavenged rags. On July 23rd, they ambushed him at his camp, wielding clubs, a hunting knife, and rope, intending to force a confession. When he tried to flee, pleading in broken Romanian, they beat him, tied him to a tree, and, driven by a false rumor that the missing children had been dismembered, mutilated him. Constantine held the axe. My father wrote, his handwriting unsteady. We cut off his left hand, then his right foot. We took turns slashing his face with Mihi's knife, carving patterns we thought would mark him as the monster we believed him to be. They left him, bleeding and unconscious, expecting him to die. 3 days later, another child went missing, found drowned in a river. An accident. Sick with guilt, they returned to the clearing, finding empty ropes, blood dried on the ground. Harold had survived, vanishing into the woods. Soon, children reported a disfigured man, limping and scarred, lurking at the forest's edge. Adults dismissed it as nightmares, but my father knew. Their cruelty had birthed the man who hides. When Andre was attacked in 1998, the injuries, left hand, right foot, face carved in the same patterns, were an exact mirror of Harold's wounds, a revenge exacted after 21 years. My father, too cowardly to confess, pushed for the tunnel's ceiling, hoping to trap the entity he'd helped create. He lived with the guilt, watching me grow, fearing Harold would come for me. The letter ended with an apology. "I'm sorry, Thomas. Sorry for what I did to Harold Barnes. Sorry for my role in what happened to Andre. Sorry for burdening you with fears that shaped your childhood without explaining why." The kitchen was dark now, lit only by a street lamp's faint glow through the window. I reread the letter, each word a stone in my chest. Harold Barnes, a man wronged, had become something else. Not fully human, not fully monster, but a vessel of vengeance. His injuries a template for Andre's suffering. The photos of my father and his friends, smiling as teenagers, mocked the horror they'd unleashed. Their easy camaraderie a cruel contrast to the legacy they'd sown. Andre's attack wasn't random, but a calculated echo of 1977. A debt my father believed paid, though it cost an innocent boy his future. A distant whistle broke the silence, low and deliberate, carried on the night air. I froze, peering out the window into the empty street, the trees rustling in the wind, their shadows dancing like specters. Just my mind, frayed by the letter's truths, conjuring echoes of that day in the tunnels. Yet, as I climbed to my childhood bedroom, I checked every lock, my father's ritual now mine, the bolts sliding home with a reassuring thud. Lying in bed, staring at the ceiling's cracked plaster, I saw it clearly. The man who hides was no legend but a man broken by cruelty, turned into a predator who mirrored his pain. My father's warnings, his fear, his guilt, all rooted in a truth he couldn't face. What would you do with such a secret, knowing your family birthed a monster through an act of unthinkable cruelty? Would you carry it silently, as my father did, or seek justice, risking the darkness it might unleash? I had choices. Go to the police, confess my father's crime, and reopen wounds long scarred. Find Andre, now a stranger, and tell him the truth behind his suffering. Or burn the letter, let the past die, and pray the whistle was only the wind. The memory of Andre's bandaged face, his dull eyes in that hospital room, haunted me, as did the silhouette between the oaks, watching, waiting. Some debts, I realized, are never fully paid, and some shadows never leave the dark.